She was crying in a hallway where no one was supposed to hear her. He wasn't supposed to be there either. But the moment Logan Mercer pushed open that kitchen door and saw her face, saw those eyes, every hair on the back of his neck stood up, gray, storm-colored, identical to a dead man's. A man who had taken a bullet meant for Logan on a mountain in the dark 9 years ago. A man whose last words weren't a prayer or a goodbye. They were a name, her name, and someone had already found her first. If stories like this keep you up at night, subscribe right now. Hit that bell. Drop your city and country in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. Like the video, share it with someone who loves a thriller that hits like a freight train. Let's go. The restaurant smelled like garlic butter and old wood and something Logan Mercer had spent 3 years trying to build. Normal. Harbor and Hearth sat on the corner of Dunmore and 6th in Port Haven, a coastal town that didn't ask too many questions of people who moved there quietly. Logan had bought the building when it was a gutted shell with burst pipes and a raccoon problem. He'd ripped out the bad walls himself, poured the concrete bar top himself, hung the lights, warm Edison bulbs strung low over tables made from reclaimed dock timber, himself. It wasn't a passion project. It wasn't therapy either, though his VA counselor had suggested something like it once, in a way that made Logan want to leave the room immediately. It was just work. Something to do with his hands, something that required his attention without requiring him to talk about Kandahar, or the 3 guys he'd carried out and the one he hadn't. Friday nights, Harbor and Hearth filled up by 7. Locals mostly. A few tourists in summer. The kind of place where the fish came from the dock 2 blocks over and the bartender remembered your drink. Logan didn't work the floor anymore, so he had people for that. But he still showed up most nights, unannounced, because he didn't trust what he couldn't see with his own eyes. Old habit, couldn't shake it. It was 9:47 p.m. when he came through the back. He parked his truck in the alley, the way he always did, and let himself in through the delivery entrance with his key. The kitchen was loud, tickets printing, pans clanging, the line cook Darnell arguing in Spanish with the dishwasher about something involving a soccer game. Normal. Good. Logan moved through the heat and steam without anyone noticing him. He wasn't hiding. He just moved the way men move when they've spent years doing it professionally. Low noise, peripheral awareness, no wasted motion. He'd been in enough tight spaces to know that the loudest person in a room is never the most dangerous one. He was heading toward the manager's office to check the week's inventory numbers when he heard it. Not loud. That was the thing. If the kitchen hadn't hit a brief lull between orders, if the exhaust fan hadn't cycled down for exactly 4 seconds, he would have walked right past. A sound. From the staff hallway on his left. Muffled, like someone pressing their face into their sleeve. Someone crying. Logan stopped. He'd heard plenty of crying in his life. The sharp, ugly kind that comes out of shock. The quiet kind that men do in sleeping bags when they think no one's listening. The hollow kind from families at Dover Air Force Base watching coffins come down ramps. This was different. This was the sound of someone who had been crying for a long time and had gotten very, very good at keeping it quiet. He turned left. The staff hallway was narrow, floored in black rubber mat, lit by a single overhead tube light that buzzed faintly. Mop closet on the right, locked office on the left. And there, at the far end beside the emergency exit, a young woman was sitting on the floor with her back against the wall, knees pulled to her chest, one hand pressed flat over her mouth. She heard him at the same time he saw her. She shot to her feet fast, not startled, trained to recover fast, and turned away, pressing the back of her wrist against her eyes. Her uniform was the simple black Harbor and Hearth polo. Her dark hair was pulled back. Her shoulders were rigid, braced. "I'm fine," she said immediately. To the wall. "Sorry, I needed a minute. I'm going back out." Logan didn't say anything. He leaned against the door frame and waited. She turned around, and that was when the floor dropped out from under him. Her eyes were gray. Not blue-gray, not hazel green in bad lighting, gray. The specific, unsettling shade of a sky an hour before a serious storm. The color that made you look twice because you weren't sure you were seeing it right. He'd seen that color exactly once before in his life, belonging to exactly one person, and that person had been dead for 9 years. Logan's chest did something complicated. "You're not scheduled tonight," he said. His voice came out steadier than he felt. She blinked, reassessing. "You're the owner." "Yeah. I've never actually seen you in here." "I know." He paused. "What's your name?" A short hesitation, the kind that wasn't about forgetting, it was about deciding how much to give. "Elena," she said. "Elena Brooks." Brooks. The name landed in his skull like a round hitting plate steel. Loud. Final. He kept his face neutral. Years of field work made that easy. What it didn't make easy was the sudden, very specific memory of a man with those same gray eyes gripping his arm in the dark on a mountainside, blood everywhere, saying, not asking, saying, "Logan, my daughter, find her, promise me." He had promised. He had also, for 9 years, failed to keep it. Logan pushed off the doorframe and walked toward her slowly, the way you approach something you don't want to startle. He stopped 6 feet away. "What happened?" he said. "Nothing. Automatic. Practiced." "Elena." She looked at him. Her jaw was tight. There was a bruise, faint, almost concealed under her jaw, that hadn't come from a doorframe. "I'm fine," she said again, but this time she didn't sound like she believed it. "Who did that to your face?" Her hand went up reflexively to her jaw, caught herself, put the hand down. "I walked into a—" "Don't," Logan said quietly. She closed her mouth. He wasn't loud about it. Wasn't angry, just clear. The kind of clear that comes from a man who has spent enough time listening to people lie about what happened to them that he stopped finding it convincing. She looked at the floor, then the ceiling. Then, with the particular exhaustion of someone who has been carrying something too heavy for too long, she sat back down against the wall. Logan sat down across from her, back against the opposite wall, knees up, floor level, non-threatening. She glanced at him sidelong. "That's the owner of the restaurant sitting on the rubber mat in the staff hallway," she said. "Appears so." "Okay." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. It was Garrett Hale, the restaurant manager. Logan had hired him 18 months ago. Good resume, decent references, new food costs and labor scheduling. He'd had a sharp edge to him that Logan had noted and filed away. Nothing that crossed a line. Until now. "Tell me," Logan said. She told him. It had started small, she said. Comments. The kind that could be dismissed as jokes if you squinted hard enough. Then it escalated into the kind of thing that couldn't be dismissed. Touching, cornering, the very deliberate abuse of scheduling power to keep her financially dependent and geographically isolated. She'd been transferred to the closing shifts, her hours cut when she tried to push back. He'd made sure she needed this job. "Why didn't you come to me?" Logan asked. "I didn't know you." She looked at him directly now. "And Garrett said—" She stopped. "What did he say?" A beat. "He said you two went way back, that you'd take his side." Logan thought about that, thought about what it meant that Garrett had anticipated the escalation path and pre-blocked it. That wasn't impulse. That was pattern. "That's not true," Logan said. "I know that now. I'm firing him tonight." She nodded once, short, not relieved, something more complicated than relief. Like she'd been hoping for that sentence and had also been afraid to hope for it. Logan stood up. His knee popped. He ignored it. "Go home," he said. "Full shift pay for tonight. Garrett won't be here when you come back." She stood too. Looked at him for a long moment. "You don't even know me," she said. "No," Logan agreed. "But I knew your father." The silence that followed was the kind that changes the shape of a room. Elena's face went very still. "What?" "Nathan Brooks." Logan kept his voice even. "Special Forces, 3rd Group. We served together for 4 years." She hadn't moved, not even to breathe, it looked like. "He talked about you," Logan said. "A lot. More than soldiers usually talk about family." He paused. "He was proud of you." "He's been dead for 9 years." Her voice had gone flat in a specific way. the defensive flatness of someone who had worked very hard to build scar tissue over something and was now feeling it crack. How do you know who I am? I don't. Not for certain. Not yet. He met her eyes. But those eyes. Your last name. Port Haven. He stopped. I've been looking for you. She stared at him. Your father asked me to find you, Logan said. He asked me to make sure you were safe. He's been dead for 9 years, she said again. This time it came out quieter, more broken. I know. Logan let that sit. He didn't apologize for it. Apologies for things you can't fix are just noise. I'm sorry it took me this long. Something moved across her face that he couldn't fully read. Disbelief and grief, and something under both of those, something warier and older than both. You own the restaurant where I work, she said slowly. By coincidence. Port Haven's a small town. That's not an answer. No, he agreed. It's not. Logan fired Garrett Hale at 10:15 p.m. He did it in the office, door closed, with the same tone he'd used to give tactical orders. Low, specific, no room for negotiation. Garrett opened his mouth twice and closed it both times. He was a bully, Logan had confirmed, and bullies read threat assessment faster than most people. He read Logan's correctly. He was out of the building by 10:22. Logan stood in the parking lot afterward and watched Garrett's taillights disappear. The night was cool, carrying salt off the harbor. Somewhere down the block, a bar was playing something with too much bass. Normal Friday night. His phone buzzed. Text from his old ranger buddy, Miles Grant, who ran private investigations out of an office above a dry cleaner on Whitmore Street. You eaten? I've got information on that contractor situation from Tuesday. Logan typed back, later. Something came up. He stood in the cold for another minute. Nathan Brooks. He hadn't said that name out loud in years. He kept it in a specific compartment. Soldiers developed them, these mental lockboxes for things that needed to stay contained. Nathan's box had a few things in it. The mission briefing, the firefight. The moment Logan had turned and seen Nathan take the hit that should have been his, the way Nathan had gone down, not like in the movies, not dramatic, just suddenly not standing anymore. The 15 minutes after that, the tourniquet, the radio call, the math that didn't work, and at the end of it, before the medevac that came 12 minutes too late, Nathan's hand on his arm and those gray eyes, dimmer, going somewhere, and the words, "She's alone, Logan. Promise me. Find her. Keep her safe." He had promised. He had spent 2 years actively trying to find Elena Brooks, and another 7 years with it in the background like a frequency he couldn't turn off. She'd been a minor when Nathan died. Moved around. Foster care initially, then a relative, then gone. The kind of administrative gap that happens when someone doesn't want to be found, or when systems fail people quietly and completely. And then she'd walked through his back door and filled out a W-4 and poured drinks for tourists, and he'd had no idea. He went back inside. He found Elena in the break room. She hadn't left yet. She was sitting at the small table with both hands wrapped around a mug of coffee she wasn't drinking, staring at a fixed point on the wall. Logan poured himself a cup from the same pot, sat across from her. He never told me much about his team, she said, without looking up. He didn't bring the war home. That's what Mom always said. He kept it separate. He was good at that. What was he like over there? Logan considered the question honestly. Not the sanitized version, the real one. Steady, he said finally. In the field, when everything went sideways, and it always goes sideways, Nathan was the one who didn't change. Same voice, same pace. You needed that. When the guy next to you isn't losing his mind, it's harder to lose yours. He paused. He was also terrible at cards, and very bad at accepting that he was terrible at cards. Something shifted in her face. Not quite a smile, something adjacent to one, moving through grief to get there. He cheated at Uno too, she said quietly. That I believe completely. She looked at her coffee. Garrett's really gone. He's really gone. He has a key to the building. Already called the locksmith, tomorrow morning, all locks. She nodded. Then after a moment, "He wasn't just harassing me." Logan set down his mug. Waited. "He found something," Elena said. "Something about my mother." She looked up. "My mother passed when I was 17. She left behind a storage unit, locker over on Route 9, the public storage off the highway. I never opened it. She told me, she made me promise, not to open it until I was sure it was safe." "Safe from what?" "She wouldn't say. She just kept saying some things are dangerous not because of what they are, but because of who wants them." Her jaw tightened. "Garrett found out about the unit. I don't know how. He was using it, using the threat of whatever's in it to keep me from reporting him. He said powerful people had been looking for whatever my mother left behind, that if I made noise about him, he'd make sure they found it before I did." The break room suddenly felt very quiet. Logan replayed what she'd just said and held each piece of it up to the light. A storage unit. Something dangerous. Powerful people looking for it. A blackmail hold on Nathan Brooks' daughter, specifically. "How long ago did your mother get that unit?" he asked carefully. "She got it right after my dad died," Elena said. "Maybe a month after. She never talked about what was in it." 1 month after Nathan's death. Logan's mind moved through that the way it moved through a tactical problem. Fast, lateral, looking for the geometry. Nathan hadn't just been a soldier. Logan knew that. He'd known it even then, in the way you know things about people you work closely with. The questions Nathan asked, the way he paid attention to administrative details that most operators ignored, the occasional satellite call that wasn't to family. There had been something Nathan was working on that he'd kept off the books, off the team, off the official record. Logan had never pushed. You didn't push Nathan. But Nathan's wife had apparently known. And whatever Nathan had been doing, whatever he'd been gathering, it had ended up in a storage unit off Route 9 that someone powerful had been trying to find for 9 years. The same someone, Logan was increasingly certain, who had put Garrett Hale in his restaurant. "Elena," Logan said slowly, "Garrett finding out about that unit, do you think that was an accident?" She looked at him. He watched the thought land, watched her work through it. She was sharp. He could see it happening behind her eyes, the pieces assembling, the picture turning into something uglier than she'd wanted it to be. "Someone sent him," she said. It wasn't a question. "I don't know that," Logan said carefully. "But I want to find out." His phone buzzed again. Miles. "Seriously, call me. The contractor situation has developed." Logan stared at the message, then at Elena, then at the distance between those two things, which was suddenly very small. He typed back to Miles, "I need you to run a name, Garrett Hale, and I need you to come to Harbor and Hearth." 3 dots. Then, "I'm already in the parking lot. Your text just now was the second weirdest thing that happened tonight." Logan looked up. "Someone's outside who I trust. I want him to come in." Elena wrapped her hands tighter around the mug. Her knuckles were white. "Okay," she said. Miles Grant came in through the back looking like a man who'd slept in his car because he actually had slept in his car. He was Logan's age, late 30s, with a beard that hadn't been a choice so much as a gradual abandonment of shaving, and the particular quality of stillness that ex-Rangers carried like a second skeleton. He sat down, looked at Elena, looked at Logan. "Nathan Brooks's daughter," Logan said. Miles went very still. "Yeah," Logan said. Miles had known Nathan, not as well as Logan, but enough. He'd been at the memorial. He remembered. "Okay," Miles said, and the word carried about 15 different things in it. He pulled out his phone and slid it across the table to Logan. On the screen was a photograph. Surveillance quality, taken from some distance, showing Garrett Hale shaking hands with a man in a dark coat outside what appeared to be a hotel lobby. "Garrett Hale met with someone 2 weeks ago," Miles said. "I wasn't looking at Garrett. I was looking at the other guy." He tapped the screen. "Name's Victor Kane. Private military contractor. Runs a security consulting firm that's basically a front for people who need problems to quietly disappear." Logan studied the photograph. "Why were you looking at Victor Kane?" Because his name came up 3 times in background noise connected to a fraud case I've been loosely tracking, Miles said. Defense contracts, siphoned money, substituted materials, the kind of thing that gets soldiers killed when their equipment fails. He paused. And because his name also showed up in a file connected to a 9-year-old covert op. Elena had gone completely still. Which op? Logan asked, though he already knew. The knowing had been building in him since the moment he'd seen her eyes. Miles looked at Logan directly. The one where Nathan Brooks died. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. Somewhere in the kitchen, Darnell dropped a pan and swore loudly, and the sound was so ordinary it was almost offensive. Elena set down her mug with a small, precise click. My father didn't just die in combat, she said. It wasn't a question either. She said it the way you say something you've been afraid to say for a long time. Fast, before the fear catches up with you. Neither Logan nor Miles answered immediately, which was, of course, an answer. Elena looked at Logan. Her gray eyes, Nathan's eyes, were steady. Whatever she was feeling was happening underneath something harder, something that had been waiting 9 years for someone to finally tell her the truth. The storage unit, she said. We need to go tonight. Elena, tonight, Logan. He looked at her for a long moment. She was right. Whatever was in that unit, whatever Nathan had been building before someone made sure he'd never finish it, it had already been in danger for 9 years. And now Garrett Hale had made contact, confirmed her location, and been removed from his surveillance position. Which meant whoever was watching had probably already noticed he'd gone quiet. Logan's phone lit up with a new text. Unknown number. No contact saved. The message was 4 words. Stop now. Walk away. Logan showed the screen to Miles. Miles looked at it, then at Logan, then at the exit. We're already in it, he said. Yeah, Logan said. He looked at Elena. She was already standing up. They didn't know, as they walked out into the cold Port Haven night, that the car parked across the street from Harbor and Hearth had been there since 9:30 p.m., 45 minutes before Logan had ever opened that hallway door. Someone hadn't been looking for Elena Brooks. Someone had been watching her for a very long time. The car was still there when they came out. Logan clocked it before he hit the bottom step. A dark blue sedan, mid-size, parked facing the wrong direction for that side of the street. Engine off. No interior light. The driver's window had a slight fog on the inside that meant someone had been sitting in there long enough for their breath to accumulate. He didn't break stride. Didn't look directly at it. Miles, he said quietly as they moved toward his truck. 2 o'clock. Blue Camry. Count of 3. Tell me if the side mirror moves. Miles pulled out his phone like he was checking a text. Used the screen reflection. Yeah, he said after 3 seconds. It moved. Elena was between them. She hadn't asked what they were doing, which told Logan something about her. She had the instinct to follow the lead of people who knew what they were doing, even when she didn't understand why. That was harder than it sounded. Most people filled silence with questions or panic. She did neither. They got into Logan's truck. He started it and pulled out slowly. No urgency, the way you leave a place you have every right to leave. The Camry didn't follow immediately. That was actually worse. Amateurs follow right away. Professionals wait, let you commit to a direction, then slot in 2 or 3 cars back. We're going to the storage unit, Logan said. That's where they're expecting us to go, Miles said. Probably. So we're going anyway. We need what's in that unit more than they need us not to have it. That changes the math. Logan checked his mirrors. Nothing yet. Elena, the address. 448 O Route 9, she said. Public storage. Bay J, Unit 42. The key's on my keyring. She was already digging in her jacket pocket. Her hands were steady. He noticed that specifically. Miles was on his phone. I'm calling Rachel Vaughn. Logan glanced at him. Rachel Vaughn was an assistant federal prosecutor out of the district office. Mid-40s, relentless, with the specific quality of righteous anger that made her either very good or very dangerous at her job. Logan had met her twice through Miles, who had fed her information on 2 separate investigations. This isn't a prosecutor situation yet, Logan said. It will be in about 40 minutes. Miles already had the phone to his ear, and I'd rather she be in motion before we open whatever's in that unit than after. Logan couldn't argue with the logic. Elena turned in her seat to look out the rear window. The Camry's 2 blocks back, she said. Switched lanes. I see it. They're good. Yeah. She turned back around and didn't say anything else about it, which was the right call. Nothing to do about a tail except know it's there and make decisions accordingly. Logan took the next left without signaling, pushed the truck up to 45 on a residential street, then slowed back down after the block. He caught a traffic light and ran it amber going red. The Camry caught the red. We have maybe 4 minutes, he said. Miles was still on the phone. Rachel, it's Miles. I need you moving. No, not tomorrow. Right now. Port Haven, Route 9 Public Storage. Because I think we're about to open a box that some very motivated people have been trying to keep closed for 9 years. A pause. Yes, I'm serious. Bring whatever prosecutorial authority you can fit in your car. He hung up. She's moving. How far out? 22 minutes, she says. We'll have the unit open in 10. Logan merged onto the highway. Whatever's in there, we need eyes on it before anyone else does. We don't move anything, we don't interpret anything. We document what's there and we wait for Rachel. And if the Camry finds us before Rachel gets there, Elena asked. Logan's jaw worked. Then we have a different conversation. But public storage on Route 9 was the kind of facility that existed in a permanent state of institutional beige, flat-roofed, floodlit, surrounded by chain link, and a keypad gate that was exactly as secure as a keypad gate ever is, which was not very. The facility was closed at this hour to walk-in traffic, but Elena had a gate code. She read it off from a note on her phone, and Logan punched it in, and the gate rolled aside with the grinding reluctance of machinery that hadn't been maintained in too long. He killed the headlights inside the lot. Bay J was in the back corner of the facility, which was both good and bad. Good because there was only one approach road. Bad because there was also only one exit. Logan filed that information away and didn't comment on it. They found Unit 42. The roll-up door was secured with a padlock. Old, heavy, the kind that didn't come with the unit but got added by someone who was serious. Elena produced a key from her ring that looked like it had never been used, still slightly shiny in a way the others weren't. She stopped with the key in her hand. I've had this key for 9 years, she said. Nobody said anything. She crouched and fitted the key to the lock. It turned on the second try. She pulled the padlock free and straightened up, both hands now at her sides. Logan gripped the handle at the bottom of the roll-up door. Step back a little. She did. He pulled the door up. The smell came out first. Old paper, dry storage, a faint chemical edge that might have been the kind of permanent markers used on document folders. No mold, which meant the unit had stayed sealed and dry. That was Nathan. Even dead, even in absentia, the man had been thorough. Logan stepped inside and swept his phone flashlight across the space. It was a 10 by 10 unit, and it was organized. That was the word. Not crammed, organized. Against the back wall, 4 banker's boxes stacked in 2 columns. A fireproof document safe the size of a carry-on bag, combination lock, set on top of a folding table. 3 large manila envelopes taped to the inside of the door, each labeled in a handwriting Logan recognized with a physical jolt. Nathan's handwriting. Block capitals, like he'd been trained. Always legible, always precise. The envelopes were labeled financial records, communication logs, photographic evidence. Miles exhaled slowly through his nose. He built a case file. He built a complete case file, Logan said. Elena was standing in the doorway. She was looking at the handwriting on the envelopes, and her face was doing something Logan didn't want to stare at, something private and cracked open that she probably didn't want an audience for. Take photos of everything before we touch it, Logan said, and the operational instruction served a second purpose. It gave everyone something to focus on. Miles started photographing systematically. Each box, each envelope, the safe, the layout of the room. Logan opened the nearest banker's box. Inside, suspended files, tabbed, dated. The earliest dates went back more than 10 years, meaning Nathan had started this well before the mission where he died. The most recent ones were dated approximately 3 weeks before that mission. Logan pulled a folder at random and opened it. The documents inside were photocopies of military procurement contracts, equipment purchases, supplier agreements, signature pages. Across the top of each copied page, Nathan had written notes in red ink. Amounts circled, names highlighted, cross-reference numbers pointed back to other folders. Logan couldn't read all of it in the dark and in 60 seconds, but he didn't need to. He could read enough. Serial numbers for ballistic plate carriers that should have met 3A standards and apparently hadn't. Purchase orders showing what the government paid versus what the supplier invoiced versus what was actually delivered. The gap between those three numbers was not a rounding error. It was millions. Miles, Logan said. Miles came over and looked at what he was holding. Neither of them spoke for a moment. He was building a fraud case, Miles said finally. Defective equipment. They were shipping substandard gear to combat units and billing for top-grade materials. And someone found out he was building it, Logan said, and arranged to make sure he didn't finish it. Logan put the folder back carefully. Exactly where it had been. His phone buzzed. Unknown number again, different from before. You had your warning. Last chance. He showed Miles without saying anything. Miles photographed the message with his own phone and kept moving. Elena had crossed the threshold into the unit. She was standing in front of the manila envelope labeled photographic evidence. She hadn't opened it, but her fingers were resting at the seal. Should I? She asked. Yeah, Logan said, carefully. She opened it. She slid out a stack of photographs, actual prints, not digital, which meant Nathan had been deliberate about maintaining hard copies that couldn't be deleted remotely. She angled them toward Logan's flashlight. The photographs showed men in various configurations, meetings, handshakes, document exchanges. Some were shot at distance with a long lens, slightly grainy. Others were clearer, taken from closer range in what looked like office settings. Most of the faces were unfamiliar to Logan. Two of them weren't. One was Victor Kane. Younger by maybe 8 or 9 years, but unmistakably him. Same build, same cut of jaw, same quality of stillness. He was shaking hands with a man in military dress uniform in one photo and signing documents across a conference table in another. The second familiar face made Logan go very still. He took the photograph from Elena's hand gently and brought it closer to the light. A senior officer, full bird colonel, in one shot, and in the next photograph, apparently taken later, same man, a brigadier general's star on his shoulder. The name tag in the clearest photo read, Harwick. Logan knew that name. Not well, not personally, but in the specific way you know the name of a man several ranks above you who makes decisions that filter down through the chain of command and arrive at ground level as mission parameters that you follow without full context, because that's how it works. General Harwick had signed off on the mission briefing for the op where Nathan died. Logan set the photograph down on the folding table, carefully. The way you set down something that might be fragile or might be dangerous and you're not sure which. Logan. Miles's voice was low. He turned. Miles was holding open one of the folders from the second banker's box. Inside were printed communication logs, emails mostly, formatted like printed out digital records. At the top of the stack, a cover sheet in Nathan's handwriting, Operation Sandcast, Internal Communications, Financial Diversion from Contract Number DF4471 Sierra. If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it. Get this to someone who still has a conscience. They all read it. The floodlights of the storage facility hummed outside, somewhere distant, tires on asphalt. Rachel has a conscience, Miles said. How far out is she? He checked his phone. 8 minutes. Logan looked around the unit. 4 boxes. A safe they hadn't cracked. 3 envelopes of which they'd opened one. 9 years of Nathan's unfinished work, preserved in a rented 10 by 10 room off a highway in a town Nathan had probably never visited. Because Nathan had been smart enough to put it somewhere they wouldn't think to look, and careful enough to make sure his daughter had the key, even if she didn't know what it opened. She knew, Elena said. Logan turned. She was looking at the cover sheet, Nathan's note. If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it. My mother, Elena said. She knew what was in here. She knew why. Her voice was even, but the evenness was doing a lot of work. That's why she made me promise not to open it until it was safe. She knew people were looking for it. Your mother was protecting you, Logan said. She was protecting me from something my father died for. She looked up. Does that make it better or worse? Logan didn't have an answer for that. He didn't try to manufacture one. Both, he said finally. Probably both, She nodded, accepted that. He was starting to understand that Elena Brooks didn't need things softened. She needed them to be true. Headlights swung across the entrance to Bay J. Every muscle in Logan's body went from standby to ready in about a third of a second. Then the car door opened, and Rachel Vaughn climbed out in a blazer over a t-shirt, one hand already raised to show she wasn't a threat, and Miles let out a breath he'd been holding. "Grant," she said, walking toward them, her heels crunching on the asphalt with the decisive stride of a woman who moved through the world like she owned the square footage ahead of her. "You said 9 years. Tell me 9 years." She stopped at the threshold of the unit and looked inside, looked at the boxes, the envelopes, the safe. Nathan's note still visible on the table. Her expression shifted. "Tell me this is what I think it is," she said. "It's what you think it is," Logan said. Rachel Vaughn stepped inside the unit, pulled a pair of nitrile gloves from her blazer pocket. She'd thought to bring them, which said something about what kind of lawyer she was, and picked up the cover sheet. She read it again. "Operation Sandcast," she said. "The name means something to you?" Miles asked. "It means something to the fraud division out of D.C. that's been trying to reconstruct a defense procurement case for 6 years with half the evidence missing." She set the sheet down. "Somebody up the chain has been blocking the investigation. Every time they get close to the financial records, there's an access problem, or a classification hold, or a key witness develops sudden amnesia." She looked at Logan. "The missing piece has always been the original source documents. The procurement contracts, the communications, the payment diversions." She gestured at the boxes. "Something like this." "Nathan Brooks built it," Logan said. "He was collecting this before he died." Rachel looked at him. "Nathan Brooks. The operator who died in—" "Yes." She absorbed that. Looked at Elena, who was standing with her arms crossed and her jaw set. "You're his daughter." "Yes." Rachel pulled out her phone. "I need to make a call. Federal level, someone I trust. And that list is short, but it's real." She was already dialing. "Nobody takes anything out of this unit. Nothing gets moved. I'm going to get a federal evidence team here before morning." Into the phone. "Yeah, it's Vaughn. I need you to clear your night." "No?" "Right now. Because I'm standing in front of something that's going to reopen Sandcast, and I need an evidence hold before someone up the food chain makes this disappear again." She stepped out of the unit, still talking. Logan turned to Miles. Miles was photographing the communication logs, page by page, methodical. "Insurance copies," he said without looking up, "in case the unit isn't as safe as we think." "Smart." "I had a good teacher." Logan moved to the roll-up door and looked out at the facility. The approach road, the chain link, the single gate they'd come through. His eyes adjusted to the dark beyond the floodlights, pushing into the shadows around the perimeter the way he'd trained himself to do, looking for shapes that didn't belong, for the specific stillness of something trying not to be seen. He didn't see the Camry. That didn't mean it wasn't there. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. Still unknown. He looked at it for 3 rings. On the 4th, he answered and said nothing. A pause on the other end. Then a voice. Male, measured, with the cadence of a man who had spent a career being the smartest person in whatever room he occupied and knew it. "Mr. Mercer," the voice said. "My name is Victor Kane." Logan kept his eyes on the perimeter. "I know who you are." "Then you know I don't make calls like this casually." A brief pause. "I'm going to give you an opportunity that I don't typically extend because I have some respect for your service record and because what you're doing tonight is based on incomplete information." "That right?" "Nathan Brooks was not the hero his daughter believes him to be," Victor Kane said. "What's in that storage unit is not evidence of corruption. It's the product of a delusional man who misread classified operations he wasn't cleared to understand. Opening those files will not bring justice. It will destroy careers of people who've spent their lives protecting this country, and it will accomplish nothing except to put everyone in that storage facility in significant danger." Logan let that sit for a moment. You done, he said. A beat. Mr. Mercer. Nathan Brooks took a bullet on a mountainside so I could walk off it, Logan said. I knew him for 4 years, and I never once saw him misread anything. He paused. If you had respect for my service record, you'd know I'm not the guy you can run that kind of story on. Silence on the line. When Victor Kane spoke again, the measured quality was still there, but something beneath it had shifted, the way a surface shifts when you apply weight to the wrong part of it. Those documents do not leave that facility tonight, he said. Prosecutor Vaughn is on her way to ensure they don't go anywhere inappropriate, Logan said. You're welcome to take that up with the federal district office. He ended the call. Miles appeared at his shoulder. Kane? Kane. What did he want? To see if I was manageable. Logan pocketed his phone. I'm not. I know. Miles paused. He called you, which means he has your number, which means he has more on us than just tonight. Yeah. That's not great. No, Logan agreed. It's not. Rachel came back around the corner of the unit, phone still in hand. Federal evidence team, 2.5 hours. My contact is waking up the right people. She stopped, reading something in the posture of both men. What happened? Victor Kane called Logan directly, Miles said. Rachel went still. Victor Kane called you. Just now. Victor Kane doesn't call people directly. He has people for that. She looked at Logan with a new, careful attention. He called you himself because he's worried, which means whatever is in those boxes worried him more than he expected when he saw you coming here. She looked back at the unit. Which means it's worse than I thought. Elena had come to stand in the doorway of the unit. She looked out at the three of them. The former soldier, the investigator, the prosecutor, assembled in a floodlit storage facility at midnight over boxes of her dead father's unfinished work. He knew this would happen, she said. My dad. He knew if he died, whoever killed him would come after it. Her voice was steady, but the steadiness was grief compressed into something functional. He built all of this knowing he might not be there to use it. Nobody argued with that. He trusted someone would find it, she said. He trusted someone would care enough to do something with it. She looked at Logan. He trusted you. Logan held her gaze. He was right to. She nodded once, and the small certainty of it, not comforted, not relieved, just decided, was more Nathan than anything else she'd done all night. Logan turned back to the entrance of the unit. Behind them, inside those 4 boxes, was 9 years of carefully preserved evidence, documents that had outlasted the man who built them, that had waited in the dark through a decade of powerful people trying to make sure they stayed there. And Victor Kane, somewhere in the night beyond the chain-link fence, had just confirmed that he knew exactly where they were. Logan's jaw tightened. He did a slow visual sweep of the perimeter, gate, approach road, the dark sections between the floodlights, and stopped. The Camry was back. It was parked on the service road on the other side of the chain link, lights off, just visible as a shape in the dark. As Logan watched, a second vehicle pulled up behind it, larger, an SUV, and then his phone buzzed with a text from the unknown number. Not Kane's voice this time, shorter, stripped of any pretense of negotiation. You have 10 minutes to walk away from the unit. After that, we come in. Logan read it. He looked at Miles. He looked at Rachel, who had read it over his shoulder and had gone the particular kind of quiet that meant she was already thinking 3 steps ahead. He looked at Elena, who had read it too, and whose expression had moved past fear into something harder and more determined. And he recognized it because he'd felt it himself on a mountainside 9 years ago, past the point of turning back. 10 minutes. Logan turned to Rachel. How fast can you get law enforcement here? Local PD, maybe 6 minutes if I call right now. She already had her phone out. But if Kane has reach, local PD may not be enough. Call them anyway. He turned to Miles. Can you get into that safe? It depends what kind of combination. If Nathan used anything logical. Elena, Logan said. She looked at him. Did your father have a number? A date? An address? Something he used for everything? She thought for exactly 2 seconds. My birthday, she said. He used my birthday for everything. Mom used to complain about it. Said it was a security risk. Miles was already at the safe. Logan went back to the unit entrance and looked at the two vehicles on the service road. Neither had moved. Someone over there was also counting down from 10. He thought about the math. 2 vehicles, minimum 2 people per vehicle, possibly more. 1 approach road. A chain-link fence that would not stop a determined man for more than 40 seconds. A federal evidence hold that was 2 hours away. A prosecutor whose authority would mean nothing to men who were paid specifically to operate outside the reach of prosecutorial authority. 10 minutes. He looked at his watch. 9 now. From inside the unit, he heard Miles say, quietly, and with no celebration in his voice, "It's open." Logan was inside the safe in under 4 seconds. Not literally. Miles had cracked it, using Elena's birthday on the first try. The combination turning with a soft mechanical click that felt disproportionately quiet given everything surrounding it. But Logan was the one who reached inside. What he pulled out was a single manila folder, thicker than it looked, bound with a rubber band that had gone brittle with age. Beneath it, a USB drive taped to an index card with Nathan's handwriting, encrypted. Key equals her middle name plus birth year. You'll know who to give this to. Logan stared at that for a moment. Her middle name, Miles said. Elena was already there. Diane, she said. Elena Diane Brooks. Her voice was flat and steady in the way of someone operating on a frequency below shock. He planned for someone specific to find this. He planned for me to find this, Logan said. Nobody said anything to that because there wasn't anything to say. Nathan had built a failsafe into a failsafe. Evidence in a box, a key on his daughter's ring, a USB addressed to the one man he'd trusted to do something with it. 9 years in a storage unit, and it was all still exactly where he'd left it. Logan pocketed the USB, handed the folder to Rachel without opening it. Document that. She was already photographing it. His watch said 7 minutes remaining on whatever countdown the men outside were observing. He didn't think they'd hold to it exactly, but he'd been in enough of these situations to know that a stated deadline was less about the time and more about establishing psychological pressure. Make the target feel rushed, feel reactive, feel like every second they spend thinking is a second they're losing. He walked to the unit entrance. The 2 vehicles on the service road hadn't moved. He counted shapes in the dark. 2 in the Camry, at minimum 3 in the SUV, though the SUV's tinted rear windows made it a guess. 5, maybe 6 men, possibly more staged back, out of line of sight. His phone buzzed. Rachel, in a low voice behind him. PD is 6 out. I told dispatch federal evidence hold potential hostile actors. They're sending 2 units. 2 units? It's Port Haven at midnight, Logan. That's what they've got. 2 local units against potentially 6 trained contractors. Those numbers didn't resolve well. He filed that and kept moving through the problem. Miles, he said, not turning around. The photos you took, where are they? Already uploaded to 3 separate cloud locations. Rachel's evidence hold contact. Are the photos with him too? Sending now, Miles said. Logan turned back to the unit. Then what's in these boxes doesn't need to stay in these boxes to matter anymore. He looked at Rachel. The physical evidence is important, but it's not the only copy. Rachel understood immediately. The digital copies are already in federal hands, which means if something happens to this unit tonight, it doesn't end here. Which means, Miles said slowly, Kane doesn't actually gain anything by coming in. He doesn't know that, Logan said. And I want to keep it that way for as long as possible because the moment he figures out the evidence is already out, he stops trying to take it and starts deciding what to do about the people who sent it. The unit went quiet. Elena was looking at him with an expression he recognized from exactly one other person. Nathan, when a tactical situation clicked into shape and he went from processing to decided. The exact moment the scales tipped. So we hold the unit, she said. We hold the unit. With what? He looked at her, looked at Miles, looked at Rachel, who had a prosecutor's authority and a phone and approximately 0 combat experience. With what we've got, he said. Logan's truck had a lockbox under the rear seat. He'd had the habit of keeping one since his 2nd year back stateside, not out of paranoia exactly, but out of the same logic that made him sit facing doors and park with his nose out, some things became reflexes that didn't unbecome. Inside the lockbox, his Glock 19, 2 spare magazines, a handheld radio scanner he used to occasionally monitor local frequencies, and a flashlight with a strike bezel that he'd never had to use in anything other than its intended function. He retrieved the Glock, checked the chamber, seated the first magazine, tucked it, handed the scanner to Miles, who knew how to use it. Miles immediately started scanning for traffic. Within 30 seconds, he picked up a frequency. 2 voices, clipped and professional, running a loose comms check. He didn't recognize the protocol exactly, but the cadence was contractor, not military. Different rhythm. Military comms had a specific economy to it, words stripped to minimum. Contractors sometimes retained that discipline and sometimes didn't, depending on who trained them and how long ago. These were reasonably disciplined. Reasonably. 2-man team at the gate, Miles said quietly, listening through the scanner's small earpiece. They've got someone watching the back of the facility, too. At least one more position I can't place. They boxed us, Logan said. Yeah. He thought about the layout. 1 entrance road, 1 gate, chain link perimeter, open lot with minimal cover between units. The storage units themselves were metal-sided, which provided concealment, but not much in the way of protection against anything serious. The nearest unit to theirs was 30 feet away. He thought about what he would do if the positions were reversed. He'd send someone to the gate on foot, cut the lock rather than deal with the keypad, stage the vehicles to block the exit road, move the assault element in from 2 angles, 1 team down the main lane, 1 coming around the south side of the facility between the units, timing it to converge. Standard CQB approach for a confined space with a known target location. Nothing fancy. Didn't need to be. They're going to come at us from 2 directions, Logan said to Miles. Gate and south perimeter. Agreed. When? Miles checked his watch. They said 10 minutes. That was 8 minutes ago. Rachel was on her phone again, this time with her voice lower and faster, less professional and more urgent. I need those units to expedite. Do you understand what I'm saying? Expedite. She listened. 4 minutes. Tell them 4. She hung up and looked at Logan with an expression that didn't quite conceal the fact that she was calculating the same numbers he was. 4 minutes, she said. He nodded. Miles, take the south side of the unit entrance. You see anyone coming through the perimeter on that angle? You call it loud and you fall back. Don't engage unless you have to, and they have to be inside the fence before it reaches that point. Copy. Rachel, you and Elena go to the back of the unit. Stack behind the last column of boxes. If this goes wrong, your job is to stay down, stay on the phone, and not move until you hear me or Miles say clear or until law enforcement comes through that gate. I'm a federal prosecutor, not I know what you are, he said. That's why you need to stay functional. You're the most important person here. Everything in those boxes is useless without someone with your authority and your contacts to do something with it. You understand? She held his gaze for a beat, nodded once, short. The non-argument of someone who recognizes logic even when it irritates them. He looked at Elena. She looked back at him. I'm not going to the back of the unit, she said. Elena, I've been hiding from this for 9 years, she said. Not on purpose, but I have. I didn't open the unit, I didn't ask questions, I didn't push. And the whole time I was doing that, whoever killed my father was sitting somewhere comfortable. Her jaw was set. Not anger, something colder and more deliberate. I'm not going to the back. He wanted to argue. He could see 3 separate arguments for it, tactically sound, immediately available. He didn't use them. Because Nathan hadn't gone to the back either, on a mountainside 9 years ago, when going to the back was the option that kept him alive. Nathan had moved toward the problem, and it had cost him everything, and it had also been exactly right. Because if Nathan hadn't moved toward the problem, Logan would have been the one who didn't come home that night. Stay close, Logan said. Don't move without me. If I tell you to get down, you get down immediately. No hesitation, no questions. She nodded. Say it back. If you tell me to get down, I get down. No hesitation, no questions. Good. He turned back to the entrance. Hotel. They came in at 9 minutes and 40 seconds, not 10, which was either impatience or a deliberate choice to undercut the stated deadline and hit before the target was fully ready. Logan heard the gate first, not the keypad, the sound of bolt cutters working through a padlock, a specific sound, two-stage, the compression and then the snap. He'd heard it before. "They're at the gate," Miles called, quiet and flat. "South side?" Logan asked. A 3-second pause. "South side is moving." Logan was already repositioning, pulling the roll-up door down to 3/4 closed. Not fully. He needed visibility, needed the ambient light from the floodlights outside, but low enough to force anyone entering to duck, to slow down, to silhouette themselves against the outside light for the half-second that mattered. He heard footsteps on asphalt, not running, tactical movement, controlled pace, spacing out. They were maintaining intervals, not bunching up. Professional. "3 on the main approach," Miles called, moving fast. Single file. "How far?" 50 meters. Logan counted the distance in his head. 30 seconds at their pace. He looked at Elena beside him. She had found the long flashlight from his truck, not the Glock, not a weapon, and was holding it with both hands in a way that suggested she planned to use it as one if she had to. He almost told her to put it down. He didn't. The footsteps got louder. 20 meters. 10. The first man came under the roll-up door low and fast. Professional entry, head down, weapon up. And Logan didn't wait for him to clear the threshold and orient. He grabbed the man's weapon arm at the wrist with his left hand, drove the frame of the Glock down hard onto the back of the man's shoulder with his right, felt the arm go limp from the nerve impact, and used the man's own forward momentum to redirect him sideways into the metal wall of the unit. The impact was loud. The man went down and stayed down, not because he was seriously hurt, but because Logan's knee was immediately on the back of his neck and the Glock's muzzle was at the base of his skull. "Don't," Logan said. The man went still. The second man was in the doorway now, and he'd seen what happened to the first, and he did exactly what Logan expected. He froze for a half-second, recalibrating. And that half-second was when Miles came through from outside, from behind the second man, and locked an arm around his throat from the rear. It wasn't clean. Miles was bigger than the man, but the man was trained and got one elbow back into Miles's ribs, hard enough that Miles grunted and his grip slipped and the man spun. But the spin put him facing the inside of the unit, facing Logan, and Logan had come up off the first man and was already in his face, Glock leveled. "Hands," Logan said. The man looked at the gun, looked at Logan's eyes, made the calculation. He put his hands up. The third man hadn't come in. Logan could hear him outside. Uncertain movement, the particular sound of someone who'd expected a quick breach and seize and was now recalculating what he'd walked into. "Tell him to step back," Logan said to the man in front of him. "What?" "The third man outside. Tell him to step back and hold." A pause. Then the man said loud enough to carry, Hold position." Movement outside stopped. From the south side of the unit there was a brief commotion, scuffling, something metallic hitting asphalt, and then Miles's voice outside, which meant Miles had moved out and around. And a moment later, "South side held. 1 man down, 1 ran." Logan didn't take his eyes off the man in front of him. "Good," Logan said to no one in particular. Yeah, they had 2 men secured, zip-tied with cord from a supply kit in Miles's car. When the third development happened, the one Logan had not fully accounted for. His phone rang. Victor Kane. Not unknown number this time. The actual name, which meant Kane wanted him to know it was him. Logan answered it. "You have a talent," Kane said. The measured quality was back, fully restored, like the last 10 minutes hadn't happened. "I want you to know I'm not embarrassed by what just occurred. Those men were a preliminary assessment." "Of what?" "Of you." A pause. "You're better than your restaurant suggested." "Tell me something I don't know." "All right," Kane said. "Here's something you don't know." His voice changed, not in pitch, not in pace, but in weight. The way a room changes when someone says something that can't be unsaid. "Nathan Brooks did not die in a firefight," Kane said. He died because I arranged for his position to be compromised during the mission. His radio frequency was fed bad coordinates. The engagement that killed him was not a coincidence, and it was not enemy action. A beat. It was a contract, and I am the one who executed it. The storage unit was absolutely silent. Logan was aware of Elena 3 feet to his left. He did not look at her. "You're telling me this," Logan said carefully, "because you want me to know you're not someone who makes threats he won't follow through on." "I'm telling you this because I want you to understand the architecture of what you're dealing with," Kane said. "I have done this before. I have done it to men with better resources than you, with more protection, with federal backing. The people I work for have reached that a prosecutor and a private investigator and a former Special Forces sergeant cannot overcome. Not because the truth doesn't matter. Because the people who control what the truth means have decided this particular truth stays buried." Logan's grip on the phone was steady. "And if you believe that," Logan said, "you wouldn't have sent 5 men to a storage facility tonight." A pause. The first real pause Kane had allowed himself. "No," Kane said finally. "I wouldn't have." "So you're worried," Logan said. "Which means whatever Nathan built in those boxes is real enough to scare people who aren't supposed to be scared of anything." "Mr. Mercer, he asked me to find her," Logan said. The anger that had been compressed into operational function all night was suddenly very close to the surface. He let it be there. Let it inform the voice without overtaking it. "He was bleeding out on a mountain, and the last thing he did was ask me to protect his daughter. You want to tell me you're the reason she didn't have a father for the last 9 years?" His voice was even, absolutely even. "Say it again, clearly." A long silence. "Your loyalty is noted," Kane said finally. "It's also going to get you killed." "People have been trying that for a while," Logan said. "I'm still answering my phone." He ended the call. He stood in the storage unit for 3 full seconds before he turned around. Elena was against the far wall. She had one hand pressed flat against a banker's box, and that hand was the only thing about her that wasn't completely still. She'd heard every word. The unit was small, the phone close. His voice hadn't been low. She knew now. Not suspected. Not feared. Knew. Her father had not died in combat. He had been killed deliberately by a man who had just confessed it on the phone to the person her father had asked to protect her. Her face was not what Logan expected. He'd expected tears or rage or the collapse of composure that would have been entirely reasonable. What he got instead was something he recognized from the deepest end of his operational career. The expression of a person who has just had something terrible confirmed and is taking it in as information and is now deciding what to do with it. Nathan's daughter. "He told you," she said. "Yes." "He actually said it." "Yes." She pushed off the wall and walked to the entrance of the unit, stepping over the zip-tied man on the floor without looking at him, and stood at the threshold looking out at the floodlit lot. Logan let her have 30 seconds. Then Rachel appeared from the back of the unit where she'd been flat against the boxes, phone still in hand. Her voice was controlled, but barely. "I got all of it. I was on an open line to my contact in D.C. the whole time. Kane's confession is on federal record." Miles came around the corner of the unit, hand pressed to his ribs where he'd taken the elbow. He was going to have a bruise the size of a dinner plate tomorrow. "PD is 90 seconds out," he said. "I can hear the sirens." Logan walked to the threshold and stood beside Elena. She was looking at the 2 vehicles on the service road, which had not moved, the men in them apparently having received some signal that told them to hold. "He's not done," she said. "No. He just told us exactly what he did, and he's not even worried about it." "He said the people above him control what the truth means," Logan said. "He believes that." "Do you?" He thought about it honestly. "I think it's been true before. I think it's been true for 9 years in this specific case." He looked at her. "I don't think it gets to stay true." She turned her head and looked at him for a long moment. "He knew you'd say that," she said. "My dad. He knew whoever he gave that key to would say exactly that." The first police unit came through the gate. Lights, no siren now, the switch to silent approach that meant someone in dispatch had given them a better picture of the situation. 2 cruisers. 4 officers out fast, hands on weapons, scanning the lot. Rachel moved forward to intercept them, badge out, voice already in its prosecutorial register. Logan watched her do it with the recognition that she was exactly the right person for the next 15 minutes of this situation in ways that he was not. Miles came to stand beside him. He moved carefully. The ribs were hurting. "That bad?" Logan said. "Ask me tomorrow." Miles watched Rachel directing the officers toward the 2 secured men. "Kane called you personally and confessed to a murder." "Yeah. That's either arrogance or it's something else." Logan had been thinking about that since the moment he'd ended the call. Kane wasn't stupid. The call itself had demonstrated that. Arrogance didn't fully explain it. You didn't survive long enough in that world by being arrogant. You survived by being certain. Kane was certain. Not that the confession didn't matter. He clearly believed it didn't. Certain that whoever stood above him in whatever structure he operated within had sufficient reach to make Logan's evidence and Rachel's federal contacts, and even a recorded confession, into nothing actionable. That kind of certainty came from evidence, from history, from watching it work before. Logan picked up the banker's box nearest to the door, looked at the folder tabs inside, Nathan's handwriting on every one. "He's been doing this for a long time," Logan said, "watching people try to expose this and then watching it fail. He's been watching it fail so many times that he stopped thinking it could go another way." "Could it?" Miles said. Logan looked at the USB drive in his hand. Nathan's handwriting on the card it was taped to. "You'll know who to give this to." "Nathan didn't think it would fail," Logan said. He looked back at Elena, who was standing 20 feet away in the cold lot, watching the police officers work, her arms around herself against the night air. She'd taken off her Harbor and Hearth polo at some point. She was in just a t-shirt, and the cold was visible in the set of her shoulders. But she hadn't moved to the truck. She was watching, taking it in, building something in her expression that Logan recognized as the early architecture of fury, organized, directed, purposeful. Nathan's eyes and Nathan's daughter's face. The federal evidence team was 2 hours out. The recorded confession was already somewhere in D.C. The documents were photographed, backed up, distributed. Victor Kane had moved his pieces, and Logan had moved his, and the board looked different than Kane had designed it to look. But Kane had also said, with the complete calm of a man stating a fact rather than making a threat, "Anyone protecting Nathan's evidence will die before sunrise." The Port Haven police were processing the scene. The storage unit was secured. Rachel was on her 3rd call to D.C., and Logan was standing in a floodlit parking lot at 2 in the morning, holding a USB drive that a dead man had labeled for him, with Kane's voice still sitting in the back of his skull like a splinter. Before sunrise. He looked at his watch. 4 hours and 11 minutes to sunrise. He looked back at the lot entrance, at the service road where the Camry and the SUV had been parked. They were gone. He hadn't heard them leave. He hadn't seen them go. They'd simply withdrawn, quiet, organized, without the bound men they'd sent in. And that fact was the most unsettling thing about the entire night. Because you don't abandon your people if you're running. You abandon your people if you're repositioning. If you've already moved to the next phase of the plan, and those 2 men on the storage unit floor are a cost you already accounted for. Logan turned to Miles. "We can't go back to the restaurant tonight," he said. Miles read his face. "Where then?" Logan thought about it. Harbor and Hearth, his building, his layout, his people. Noah, Darnell, the other staff who'd been on shift tonight and had gone home without knowing any of this had started. "We have to go back," he said. Miles stared at him. "You just said—" "I know what I said." Logan was already moving toward Rachel. "Kane pulled those vehicles. He's not done with the storage unit. He's done with the storage unit, which means he's already somewhere else. And the only place he has left to go is the place where he can still apply pressure." He stopped beside Rachel, interrupting her mid-sentence, and she looked at him with the expression of someone who was about to object to being interrupted. "My restaurant," he said. He's going there. Rachel read his face, read Miles's face, turned back to her phone and said quickly to whoever she had on the line, I need to add a location. Harbor and Hearth Restaurant, Dunmore and 6th, Port Haven. Possible imminent hostile action. A pause. I know it's a restaurant. Send someone. Logan found Elena. She was already walking toward the truck. She'd heard him. She didn't ask questions. She just moved. He fell into step beside her, and somewhere behind them in the cold storage lot, with Nathan's documents sealed and witnessed and backed up and beyond Kane's reach, a car engine turned over, and headlights came on. Not the Camry, not the SUV. Something new. Logan saw it in his peripheral vision as he opened the truck door. A dark vehicle on the highway beyond the fence, moving slowly, no lights, running dark. Watching, patient. He got in the truck and drove. The dark vehicle stayed with them for 6 blocks before Logan was certain. Not tailgating, too far back for that. Running without lights on a road where every other car had theirs on, which made it visible in the specific way that something trying not to be visible sometimes becomes more visible than everything else. Logan watched it in the side mirror and said nothing about it for 2 blocks, waiting to see if it would turn off. It didn't turn. We've got company, he said. Miles in the passenger seat already had the scanner up. Elena was in the back, quiet, processing something in whatever interior way she'd decided to process it. Same frequency? Logan asked. Miles listened for 10 seconds. No traffic? Different unit? Or they switched channels? Logan ran the numbers. 4.5 miles to Harbor and Hearth. The vehicle behind them was pacing, not closing, meaning it wasn't an interdiction, it was a shepherd, keeping them moving in a direction someone wanted them to move, toward the restaurant. They want us at the building, Logan said. Because the building is where they've already set up, Miles said. Logan's jaw tightened. He'd called it at the storage unit, and he'd been right, which meant he'd also been right that Kane had been planning the restaurant move before the storage unit confrontation was even finished. The 2 men they'd secured at the facility had been a probe. Gather information on response capability, pull back, reposition the main effort somewhere with better conditions. A restaurant at 2 in the morning was a better battlefield than an open storage lot. Contained, familiar to Kane's people through surveillance, limited exits. And if any of Logan's staff had come back for something forgotten, or if Noah had stayed late the way he sometimes did when he had closing inventory. Call Noah, Logan said to Miles. Miles was already on it. 4 rings. Voicemail. Try the restaurant landline. 3 rings on that. Nothing. Logan pushed the truck to 60. The vehicle behind them accelerated to match. He killed his headlights 2 blocks out and came around the back of Harbor and Hearth through the alley, the way he'd come in hours earlier. The rear of the building was dark, which it shouldn't have been. He left a security light on above the delivery entrance, always, every night. Bulb burned out, or someone had dealt with it. He stopped the truck 150 feet from the back entrance in the shadow of a dumpster belonging to the dry cleaner next door. Stay here, he said. You said that at the storage unit, Elena said from the back seat. I know what I said. I'm not staying in the truck. He turned around and looked at her. She looked back at him with the specific patience of someone who has already made up their mind and is waiting for you to catch up. In the dark, her eyes were more shadow than gray, but he could see the set of her face, Nathan's jaw, Nathan's stillness. He turned back around. Miles, passenger side, and you cover the east corner. Don't go past the corner until I'm through the delivery door. He reached under the seat and pulled out the spare flashlight, smaller, tactical, and handed it back to Elena. You stay on my left shoulder, 3 feet back. If I stop, you stop. If I drop, you drop. And don't move until I move. Not a suggestion. Understood, she said. He got out of the truck. The alley smelled like the harbor and garbage and the faint ghost of the restaurant's kitchen exhaust. Garlic and fried oil baked into the ventilation over years. Logan moved to the delivery entrance low and flat against the building wall, Elena 3 feet behind him, the way he'd said. He could hear her breathing, controlled, slightly faster than normal, but controlled. Good. The delivery door was unlocked. It was never unlocked. He locked it himself every night he came through it. He put his hand flat on the door and looked back at Miles, who had reached the east corner and was visible as a shadow. Miles saw the door, read it the same way, and gave a short nod. "I see it. Go." Logan pushed through. The kitchen was dark and wrong, not empty. That was the first thing. The prep line was a mess, which was not how Darnell left it, not how anyone left it. Sheet pans on the floor, a stock pot knocked sideways, water pooled on the tiles that still hadn't reached the floor drain. Something had happened fast in here, something that hadn't allowed for the normal end-of-night cleanup. Logan moved through the kitchen to the pass-through window and stopped. Through the small rectangular window, he could see the dining room. 3 men he didn't recognize in dark clothing moving through the restaurant with flashlights. One at the bar, going through the register. One near the front windows, watching the street. One standing in the center of the dining room, not moving, which meant he was the command element of the 3 and was holding position while the others cleared. The Edison bulbs were all off. The soft jazz that should have been playing from the system Logan left on a timer was silent. The warm dock timber tables were shadows in the flashlight sweeps. There was someone in a chair near the kitchen pass. Noah. Logan knew him by his hoodie, the Port Haven fisherman hoodie he wore every shift because he was 23 and had worn it since high school and saw no reason to stop. Noah was zip-tied to a chair that had been pulled from the nearest foretop, and his head was down in a way that could mean unconscious or could mean he was being careful. Logan couldn't see blood from this distance, and the light was bad. He pulled back from the window. Elena was right behind him. He held up one finger, 1 second, and she stopped. He pulled out his phone and typed to Miles. 3 hostiles in dining room. Noah secured in chair near kitchen pass. "I'm going through the kitchen. East entrance on my signal." Miles typed back, "With you." Logan turned to Elena and kept his voice barely audible. "There are 3 men in the dining room. Noah is in a chair. I need you to stay in the kitchen, not the dining room, and stay below the prep counter until I clear the space. If shooting starts, you go flat on the floor and you stay there." "Is Noah hurt?" "I don't know yet." She looked through the pass window, saw Noah's hoodie. Her expression did something brief and tight. "Okay," she said. He moved to the door between the kitchen and the dining room, put his hand on it. Thought about the layout. He'd built this room. He knew every corner of it, knew which tables gave cover and which gave concealment and which gave neither. The man at the bar was his problem because the bar ran perpendicular to the kitchen door, meaning the moment Logan came through, he'd be visible from the left. He needed the man at the bar to not be at the bar. He looked at the kitchen, looked at the stock pot on its side on the floor. He crossed to it, crouched, and tipped it upright with a controlled roll that sent about a gallon of leftover water sliding across the tile floor in a wave that hit the base cabinet under the prep counter with a sound like someone dropping a very large book. He was back at the door before the sound finished. In the dining room, flashlights swung toward the kitchen. He heard the man at the bar say something low to the man in the center of the room. Not words he could make out, just the register of it, terse and questioning. The man in the center of the room pointed at the kitchen door. The man at the bar came toward it. Logan stepped to the hinge side of the door, pressed flat, Glock up, and waited. The door opened inward. The man with the flashlight came through fast and turned left, which was where the sound had come from, which meant he'd turned his back to Logan. Logan took him by the collar, drove him forward into the prep counter hard enough to rattle every pan on the rail above it, and the man went down with a noise that was partly impact and partly surprise, and came to rest face down on the kitchen tile where Logan kept him with a knee and a very direct statement involving the muzzle of the Glock against the back of his head. "Don't," Logan said. The man didn't. From the dining room, a voice, "The center man, command element. Chen? Chen, status." Logan looked at Elena, who was crouched behind the prep counter exactly where he'd told her to be. He raised 2 fingers, then pointed at the pass-through window. 2 more. In there. She nodded. He picked up the fallen flashlight and did something that was either brilliant or stupid. He clicked it on and swept it across the kitchen pass-through window from below so that the beam was visible through the small opening from the dining room. Visible, but not attached to a person, which for approximately 2 seconds would read as his man clearing the kitchen. 2 seconds was what he needed. He went through the door. It did not go perfectly. The second man, not the one watching the street, the center man, was faster than Logan had calculated and was already moving toward the kitchen door when Logan came through it, and they collided in the kitchen doorway rather than Logan getting any positional advantage. It became a close quarters problem rather than a standoff problem, which was a different equation entirely. Logan had been in plenty of both, and this kind was uglier, more contingent, more likely to hurt the person who wasn't willing to do damage. Logan was willing. He took an elbow to the cheekbone that sent bright light across his vision and probably split something. He couldn't tell yet. And he answered it with a palm strike to the man's nose that he felt connect properly, and the man's grip on his jacket arm went slack for long enough. Logan got inside and took him down with the kind of efficiency that had nothing to do with grace and everything to do with repetition, the specific muscle memory of having practiced this in enough iterations that the body just does it. The man hit the floor hard and stayed there, making the particular sounds of someone whose nose was badly hurt and who was focused on breathing through it. The third man, the one at the window, had spun around. He had his weapon up. Logan was on one knee over the second man, own weapon up, and for a moment the dining room was two people with guns pointed at each other across the warm shadows of harbor and hearth. Between the tables Logan had built, and under the Edison lights that weren't on, and the whole thing had the quality of something that had gone dangerously outside its intended margins. "Put it down," Logan said. The man didn't. What happened next was not Logan. From the kitchen door, Atlas came through. Logan had forgotten about Atlas. He wasn't sure how. Atlas was his dog, a 9-year-old Belgian Malinois that had retired from military working dog service 18 months after Logan had, and who spent most of his time sleeping under the bar at Harbor and Hearth, because Logan brought him every night and he was too old to do anything dramatically active anymore, except apparently not tonight. Atlas crossed the dining room in slightly too many strides, his hips weren't what they'd been, and hit the third man's weapon arm from the side with his full weight, which was 62 pounds of dog moving at velocity, and the man's gun went wide and discharged into the ceiling above the bar. And the sound in the enclosed restaurant dining room was enormous and ringing and completely stopped everything for about 1 full second. In that second, Miles came through the east entrance. The third man was still standing, gun now pointed at the floor. Atlas backed off him, and Miles had him from the side with a forearm across his chest, and the man made the correct decision and let the weapon drop. Logan let out a breath that felt like it had been compressed in his chest for the last 45 seconds. His cheekbone was definitely split. He could feel the specific wet warmth of it. He pressed the back of his hand against it briefly and took it away and didn't look at it and moved to Noah. Noah's head came up when Logan crouched in front of him. Not unconscious, aware, alert, pupils tracking correctly. There was a cut on his forehead above his left eye, and his mouth was set in the tight line of someone in pain who wasn't going to say so. "Hey," Logan said. "Hey," Noah said. His voice was steady, a little rough. "Your dog is the best dog." "I know." Logan was already working on the zip ties with his pocket knife. "You hurt bad?" "My head. I'm okay. They hit me with something when I was closing out the register." He looked around the ruined dining room. Are those the guys who, Yeah. "Okay." He watched Logan cut the second tie. "The big one. When they brought me in here, he said someone was coming who wanted to talk to you. He said it like I was supposed to be worried." "Were you?" "A little bit." Noah rotated his wrists, getting circulation back. "More annoyed, honestly. I had a date tomorrow." Logan almost laughed. He didn't quite get there, but the movement was close enough to count. He stood up and looked at the dining room. 2 secured men on the floor, one at the window held by Miles. Noah cut loose. Atlas sitting near the bar looking extremely self-satisfied in the way that Malinois did when they'd done what they were built to do. Elena standing in the kitchen doorway taking all of it in. The ceiling above the bar had a hole in it the size of a tennis ball. Logan looked at the hole for a moment. Then he put it aside and took inventory. 3 hostiles down, building secured, his people accounted for. His cheek was bleeding steadily enough that it was going to need attention before long. Miles was favoring the rib side again, and had also acquired a new cut on his forearm that he didn't seem to have noticed yet. The east entrance was open, cold air coming through. From outside, Logan heard footsteps on the front steps of Harbor and Hearth. Not fast, not tactical. Deliberate. A single person, walking like they owned the sidewalk. Then the front door of the restaurant opened. Victor Kane stepped inside. He was not what Logan had constructed from the voice on the phone. Mid-50s, lean, in a dark jacket over a dark shirt, no tie. Gray at the temples. The quality about him that was most immediately apparent was not size or threat display. It was the specific composed attention of a man who had walked into a room and was cataloging everything in it with a speed and accuracy that made you understand immediately why he was still alive in the profession he'd chosen. He looked at the three men on the floor, looked at Miles, looked at Noah, looked at Logan. His gaze stopped at the ceiling above the bar with a single brief flash of something. Not quite annoyance, more like the mild dissatisfaction of someone whose instrument has performed below specification. He looked at Elena last. Something moved in his face when he looked at her. Logan watched it and couldn't name it. It wasn't guilt. Men like Kane had engineered guilt out of themselves a long time ago. It was closer to recognition. Like he'd seen that face somewhere before, and it had mattered in a context he'd tried to leave behind. "Mr. Mercer," Kane said. "Kane," Logan said. "You've had a productive night." Getting there, Kane moved into the dining room without being invited, with the ease of a man who was accustomed to being the most dangerous thing in a room and therefore didn't require permission to move through spaces. He stopped in the center of the floor, exactly where his command element had been standing 20 minutes earlier, and looked around at the restaurant with a brief, assessing sweep. "You built this place," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah. It's good work." He looked at the bar. "I'm sorry about the ceiling." Logan said nothing. Kane pulled out a chair, one of the reclaimed dock timber chairs. Logan had made them himself, and sat down. Crossed one leg over the other, rested his hands on the table in front of him. The posture of a man settling in for a conversation he expected to control. "Here's where we are," Kane said. "Your federal prosecutor has evidence in custody and a recorded conversation that, taken at face value, constitutes a confession. I want you to understand something about why that doesn't end this tonight." "I'm listening," Logan said. He wasn't moving. None of them were. Miles had the third man against the wall. Elena was in the kitchen doorway. Noah was on his feet, holding the back of his chair, watching. "General Harwick has been a protected entity within 3 successive administrations," Kane said. "The fraud case connected to Sandcast was officially closed twice, once for insufficient evidence and once for national security classification. The people who closed it were not corrupt exactly. They were pragmatic. They made calculations about what destabilized existing institutional structures, and they made the call that this particular truth was not worth the cost of extracting it." He paused. "I have operated under that protection for 9 years. I have watched prosecutors try and fail. I have watched investigators build cases that disappeared. I have watched people who were certain they had the right angle on this discover that the angle didn't matter because the wall they were pushing on was thicker than they understood." "You're making a speech," Logan said. "I'm explaining a structural reality." "No," Logan said. "You're trying to scare us off. You did the same thing on the phone. You're doing it in person now because the phone version didn't work." He kept his voice level. "You came in here alone, Kane. You walked in the front door by yourself. You know why you did that? Because you don't have a next move that involves force. And I think you understood that somewhere around the time your men called in from the storage unit." Logan moved closer, not closing distance aggressively, but removing the space between them deliberately. "You came in to talk because talking is what you have left." Kane's expression didn't change exactly, but something behind it did. "Nathan built that case for 3 years," Logan said. "He knew everything you just told me. He knew about the classification holds. He knew about the protected channels. He knew that going through official routes was going to fail. So he built something that didn't rely on official routes. He built physical evidence, hard copies, photographic proof, and he put it somewhere cold and dark and waited." Logan stopped 4 feet from the table. "He knew he was going to die. He knew you were coming for him, and he knew he couldn't stop it. And instead of running, he spent his last weeks making sure that when someone finally opened that unit, they'd have everything they needed." The dining room was very quiet. Kane looked at Logan for a long moment. Then for the first time he looked at Elena with something that was almost honest. "He was the best source material I ever worked against," Kane said. "That's not sentiment. It's professional assessment. He was meticulous." "Don't," Elena said from the doorway. Her voice was completely flat. Kane looked at her. "Don't talk about him like he was a problem you solved," she said. "You killed him, and you've been hiding it for 9 years, and that doesn't make you professional. It makes you a coward who needed 9 people above him to stay safe." She pushed off the doorframe and walked into the dining room. "My father worked alone. He had no protection. He had no institutional backing. He had a camera and a filing system and a storage unit off a highway in a town he'd never been to." She stopped in front of Kane's table. "And even dead, he still beat you." Kane looked at her for a long moment. Something in the composed attention shifted. Not broke, but shifted, like a weight redistributed. "He did," Kane said quietly. "He did beat me." It was the last thing Logan expected him to say. Miles moved slightly, recalibrating, and Logan raised one hand briefly. "Hold." "The USB drive," Kane said. He was looking at Logan now. "Nathan's encrypted drive, where is it?" "Somewhere you can't reach it." "I'm not asking to reach it," Kane said. "I'm asking because I want to know if it contains what I think it contains. Because if it does—" He stopped. The composed quality was doing a lot of work to hold something in. "Because if it does, there are 3 people above Harwick who are also on it. Not in the fraud case. In something larger. Something that Nathan found the edge of but couldn't fully document before he died." He looked at Logan steadily. "If that's on the drive, you need to understand that Rachel Vaughn's federal contacts are not going to be enough." Logan looked at him. "And you're telling us this because—" Kane was quiet for a moment. "Because Harwick made a decision 6 months ago that I was not consulted on," he said. "A decision that creates a liability for me that I am not willing to carry." The admission was precise and bloodless, utterly without remorse, and completely genuine. "I did what I was contracted to do. I am now in a position where the people who contracted me have decided I know too much, which makes my situation and your situation structurally similar." The dining room absorbed that. "You want a deal," Miles said from across the room. "I want a conversation with Rachel Vaughn," Kane said, "under specific terms, with specific protections, in exchange for testimony that makes her Sandcast case airtight and gives her something considerably larger." "You want to flip?" Logan said. "I want to survive," Kane said, "which is a thing I have in common with everyone else in this room." Logan's cheekbone was throbbing. The blood had slowed to a seep, but it was tracking down the side of his face in a way that made him feel like he looked worse than he was. He pressed his sleeve against it and looked at Kane, a man who had confessed to arranging Nathan's death and was now sitting in his restaurant asking for protection. He thought about Nathan. He thought about what Nathan would say if someone told him this was the outcome, that the man who arranged his death would end up in Logan's restaurant asking for federal protection in exchange for testimony that might actually close the case Nathan had spent 3 years building. Nathan would probably say something dry and unhelpful about the irony, and then he would say, "Does it get the job done?" Logan looked at Elena. She was looking at Kane with the specific, contained quality of someone who had made a very clear internal decision and was waiting to see if the external world was going to be allowed to align with it. "Rachel Vaughn is on her way here," Logan said. "You can make that pitch to her directly." "And between now and when she arrives," Kane said. Logan looked at him. "You sit in that chair. You don't touch your phone. You don't make a move that reads as anything other than cooperative, and we'll get through the next 30 minutes without incident." "And your dog?" Kane said with a glance at Atlas. Atlas was sitting near the bar, still watching Kane with the focused, unblinking attention of a working dog that had not been told the threat was over. "Atlas decides for himself," Logan said. Kane looked at the dog. The dog looked at Kane. "Fair enough," Kane said. He put his hands flat on the table and didn't move them. Logan took 3 steps back and leaned against the bar and kept the Glock at his side. Not pointed, not holstered, just present. His face hurt. His knee hurt. The ceiling above the bar had a hole in it, and there were 3 men zip-tied on his dining room floor, and his restaurant was going to need a serious deep clean before it was fit to serve food. Miles crossed to him, keeping one eye on Kane. He kept his voice barely above a whisper. "You trust him?" "Not even a little," Logan said. But Nathan built the case. Vaughn has the records. Kane has the testimony to connect all of it to people Nathan couldn't reach before he died. Logan wiped the side of his face again. "You don't have to trust someone for their information to be useful." Miles thought about that. Nathan would hate this. "Nathan would recognize it," Logan said. From outside, the sound of a car pulling up on Dunmore Street. Then another. Headlights swept across the front windows of Harbor and Hearth, and the blue-red pulse of police flashers strobed briefly through the glass, and Logan let out a breath that had been compressed since the moment he'd seen the delivery door unlocked. Rachel Vaughn came through the front door 30 seconds later, badge out, moving fast, with 2 federal agents he didn't recognize flanking her. Not local PD this time, the real thing, suits and credentials, and the particular economy of motion that meant they were ready for whatever they walked into. She stopped inside the door, took in the dining room, the men on the floor, the ceiling hole, Kane at the table, Logan at the bar, Atlas near the bar stool, Noah standing with a cut on his forehead, still holding the back of a chair. She looked at Logan. "Are you bleeding?" "A little." "You need stitches." "Later." She looked at Kane. Kane looked at her. "Ms. Vaughn," he said, "I have a proposition." Rachel Vaughn crossed the dining room with the steady, contained forward motion of a woman who had been building toward this conversation for 6 years without knowing it. She pulled out the chair across from Kane and sat down. "I'm listening," she said, and somewhere under the bar, Atlas finally lay down. Rachel Vaughn did not take notes during the first 20 minutes. She just listened. Kane talked with the specific, organized precision of a man who had been carrying a detailed accounting of his actions for a long time and had decided with complete deliberation to set it down. He didn't minimize. He didn't perform remorse. He laid out the architecture of Operation Sandcast the way an engineer describes a structure they built, material by material, decision by decision, load-bearing element by load-bearing element. Logan stood at the bar and listened to the man describe how Nathan Brooks had died. He'd known the broad shape of it since the phone call at the storage unit. Hearing it in full detail was different. The compromised radio frequency, the coordinates fed to Nathan's position that put him in the path of an engagement that was supposed to look like standard hostile contact. The contractor team staged on the far side of the ridge that Kane had personally directed. The 15-minute window between the first shots and the medevac call that had been, according to Kane, sufficient margin for the outcome to be certain. 15 minutes. Logan had spent those 15 minutes trying to stop the bleeding with equipment that wasn't good enough and a radio that kept breaking up on the wrong frequencies. He'd always attributed that to terrain and equipment failure. He stood at the bar and held that knowledge and let it settle into the same place where the rest of it lived, the compartment that never fully closed. Elena was at the far end of the bar. She'd taken a stool and was sitting with both hands flat on the bar top, listening. She hadn't moved in 20 minutes. Logan checked on her every few minutes the way you check a structural element, not intrusively, just making sure it was holding. It was holding. Across the room, Miles had his phone out and was running quiet cross-checks on everything Kane was naming, people, dates, contract numbers, feeding confirmations to Rachel's federal contact in real time. One of the 2 agents Rachel had brought was doing the same thing on a tablet, face unreadable, fingers moving steadily. The other agent was standing near the door, watching Kane, with the attentiveness of someone whose job it was to watch people and who was very good at their job. At some point, Noah had quietly retrieved a bar rag and a bag of ice and delivered both to Logan without comment. Logan pressed the ice against his cheekbone and held it there and said nothing, and Noah went back to his spot near the pass and sat down on an overturned milk crate and watched the room. Kane got to General Harwick at the 30-minute mark. He named 3 others above Harwick, not military, civilian. Defense procurement officials, one of whom had cycled through 2 cabinet-adjacent positions in the years since Sandcast. He named them with dates and contexts and the specific nature of their involvement, and as he named them, Rachel's second agent stopped typing and looked up at Rachel with an expression that communicated something significant without words. And Rachel gave a single short nod that communicated she'd understood it. Logan filed that exchange away. "The USB drive," Kane said eventually. He looked at Logan. "Nathan's encrypted drive. I need to know what's on it." "Why?" "Because if he documented what I think he documented in the last 3 weeks before the mission, there are names on that drive that aren't in the physical boxes. People Nathan found that I didn't know he'd found." Kane's hands were still flat on the table. He hadn't moved them in 30 minutes. "If those names are on the drive and they're not handled correctly, if the wrong people inside the federal system see them before the right people have protection in place, this entire case gets buried again. Not by force this time, by procedure." Rachel looked at Logan. Logan pulled the USB drive from his pocket and set it on the bar. He didn't slide it to anyone, just set it there. "Elena," he said. She turned on the bar stool. "It's yours," he said. "Nathan left it for you to decide." She looked at the drive. The small piece of plastic and metal that her father had taped to an index card with her name encoded in the password, in a fireproof safe, in a storage unit, for someone to find when the time was right. She picked it up, held it for a moment, then she carried it across the room and set it in front of Rachel Vaughn. "Do something with it," Elena said. Rachel picked it up. But the next 4 hours were the least cinematic 4 hours Logan had experienced in recent memory, which made them in some ways the most surreal. Federal agents on phones, documents photographed again, more carefully this time, with proper chain of custody protocols. Kane's 3 men from the dining room taken into federal custody with a quietness that suggested they'd already been assessed as secondary. 2 additional agents arriving at 3 in the morning with equipment cases and a forensic approach to everything in the building. The Port Haven PD officers stood near the entrance looking slightly adrift, which Logan understood. They'd responded to a call about hostile actors at a restaurant and arrived to find a multi-agency federal operation already in progress, and nobody had fully briefed them because there hadn't been time. Logan went over and talked to the senior officer, a sergeant named Okafor, who he recognized from the neighborhood, steady woman, 10 years on the force. He gave her the short version. She listened without interrupting, which he appreciated. "You need medical," she said when he finished. "I know. That's not a suggestion either." An EMT came through the door 20 minutes later, sent by Okafor, and cleaned and closed the cheekbone cut with 3 steri strips and told Logan it probably didn't need stitches, but he should get it looked at tomorrow regardless. Logan said he would. He probably would. Miles got his ribs evaluated. Not broken, 2 cracked, which Miles accepted with the expression of a man who had cracked ribs before and found them annoying rather than alarming. His forearm cut got cleaned and bandaged. He sat on a bar stool and drank a glass of water and looked at the dining room with the specific quiet of someone who was very tired and processing a large amount of information and had decided to do that quietly. Noah got 7 stitches in his forehead from the same EMT and then immediately asked if he could make coffee because he felt useless just sitting there. The EMT said there was no medical reason he couldn't make coffee. Noah made a full pot and distributed it without being asked, and nobody thanked him explicitly, but everyone took a cup, which was its own kind of thanks. Around 4 in the morning, Rachel came to Logan at the bar. She sat down on the stool Elena had vacated. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. It was the tired of someone who had been carrying a professional frustration for 6 years and had just watched it resolve and hadn't fully processed what to do with the space that left. "The drive," she said. "What's on it?" "Nathan built a secondary file." She paused. "Separate from the fraud case. He found the financial diversion trail going somewhere the primary case didn't reach. Not just Harwick, not just the procurement officials. He tracked money through 3 shell companies to a Congressional Oversight Committee member who was supposed to be investigating Sandcast." She said it flatly. The person investigating the cover-up was one of the architects of it. Logan let that land. "That's why the investigation kept failing," he said. "Every time it got close, this person redirected resources, stalled witnesses, classified key documents. 6 years, 2 separate case teams, and every time they hit a wall, it was because someone with oversight access was building the wall." She looked at her coffee. Nathan found it. He found the shell companies, the payments, the timeline. It's documented. It's documented well. She looked up. He was a very thorough man. Yeah, Logan said. He was. She was quiet for a moment. Kane's testimony closes the fraud case. Nathan's drive opens something bigger, and we now have both. She shook her head slightly. I've been a prosecutor for 16 years. I've had good cases. This is... She stopped, because she was too professional to finish that sentence with anything that might sound like enthusiasm. Logan understood it anyway. What happens to Kane? He asked. That depends on how useful his testimony is and whether his cooperation holds through trial. She said it carefully, with the precision of someone who didn't want to promise what they couldn't guarantee. He won't walk. The Nathan Brooks matter alone, the recorded confession, that's not something a deal makes disappear entirely. But the people above him are larger targets. That matters to the calculus. Logan thought about that. He didn't like all of it. He wasn't sure he was supposed to. Nathan wanted justice, he said finally, not satisfaction. Those are different things. Rachel looked at him. Yes, she said. They are. But the federal agents cleared out before 6. Kane left in custody, not in cuffs, which Logan noticed, but flanked and accompanied and under no illusions about the nature of the accompaniment. He walked through the dining room toward the front door and stopped briefly near Logan. He didn't say anything immediately. Logan didn't say anything either. He chose the right person, Kane said finally. Nathan. He chose correctly. Logan held his gaze. He usually did. Kane nodded once, short. Then he walked out the front door of Harbor and Hearth and didn't look back. And 2 federal agents walked out behind him, and that was the last Logan saw of Victor Kane in person. The ceiling above the bar still had a hole in it. Logan stood under it for a moment, looking up at the ragged edges of the drywall, the exposed insulation, the darkness of the cavity above. He'd have to patch that. Add it to the list. The locks he'd already called about. The broken window in the front dining room from where one of Kane's men had apparently come through it during the initial entry, the prep counter rail that had gotten bent when he'd driven someone into it. He'd built this place once. He could fix it. Miles came to stand beside him, also looking at the hole. Could have been worse, Miles said. Could have been a lot of things. Atlas is a hero. Atlas has known that for years. They stood under the hole for another moment. The name, Miles said, Harwick, General Harwick. When you saw his photograph in Nathan's files, he paused. You knew that name. I'd heard it. You'd followed orders that came from him. Not directly. Logan looked at the bar. But yeah, the chain of command runs through certain offices. His was one of them. He paused. I didn't know what he was. I know you didn't. But I followed orders that his office signed off on, and I didn't ask the questions I should have asked. Miles turned to look at him. You didn't know. Nathan asked the questions, Logan said. Nathan saw it and he didn't look away, and he built a 3-year case file by himself with no backing and no protection. He looked at his hands on the bar. I was in the same organization. I didn't see it. You're not Nathan, Miles said. No. You're the one who found her. You're the one who kept the promise. Miles's voice was level, not gentle exactly. Miles didn't do gentle particularly well, but honest. That counts. Logan was quiet for a moment. Yeah, he said. It counts. He pushed off the bar and went to find Elena. She was in the alley behind the restaurant, not hiding, just standing in the cold in the gray, early morning light that came before the actual sunrise, with her jacket finally on, looking at the back of the building. The delivery door was open behind her. Logan came through it and stood beside her. The alley smelled like the harbor. The sky above the rooftops was the specific deep blue that preceded dawn by about 40 minutes. Not dark anymore, not light yet. The color that had no good name because it only existed in that narrow window. You okay? He asked. She considered it honestly. No, she said. But I'm not okay either. I'm somewhere in the middle, and I think that's probably accurate. Yeah. I spent 9 years not knowing, she said. And now I know everything. And I keep waiting for knowing to feel like something solid, like ground. She looked up at the sky. It doesn't yet. It won't for a while, Logan said. That's not a flaw in you. That's just how it works. She was quiet. He knew, she said. My dad. He knew they were coming for him. He had time to run, probably. He could have, I don't know, disappeared, put the document somewhere and disappeared. She paused. Why didn't he? Logan had thought about that. Had thought about it specifically tonight, in the hours between the storage unit and this alley. Because it wasn't enough to survive it, he said. He wanted to end it. Running would have saved him and left everything he'd built sitting in a box, and the people who'd killed soldiers with bad equipment would have kept doing it to the next group and the one after that. He looked at the sky, too. He decided the cost was worth paying. He decided without asking me, she said. The grief in it was clean and old, and she wasn't trying to dress it up. He was trying to protect you from the decision. I know. She exhaled. I know that. I wish he'd asked. Logan didn't have an answer for that one. Some wishes didn't have answers. They just had the weight of them. He left you the key, Logan said. She looked at him. He didn't have to do that, Logan said. He could have left it with a lawyer, with someone on the team, with anyone. He left it with you. He left the password as your name. He paused. He wanted you to be the one who opened it when the time was right. He wanted the choice to be yours in the end. Elena looked at the door of the restaurant. The light from inside was warm through the opening. Noah had turned the kitchen lights back on at some point, probably without thinking about it, and the warm glow of it came out into the cold alley. She blinked once, twice. Then she pressed the back of her wrist against her eyes for a moment, and Logan looked at the sky and gave her that moment. And when he looked back, her hand was down and her face was still, and she was breathing steadily. Okay, she said. Okay, he said. Doubt. The sun came up over Port Haven at 6:42. Logan watched it from the front step of Harbor and Hearth, sitting with a cup of Noah's coffee and his back against the doorframe. The harbor 2 blocks away caught the first light and held it on the water, and the town came up slowly around it the way small towns do. Incrementally, without announcement, the lights in the bakery on Whitmore, the fishing boat engine starting down at the dock. Inside the restaurant, Miles was on a call with his DC contact, voice low and professional. Rachel had gone. She'd left at 5:45 with a case file that she'd described, in the understatement Logan suspected she'd been building toward for 16 years, as significant. Noah was cleaning the kitchen with the thoroughness of someone for whom the act of cleaning was a way of restoring order to a world that had briefly lost it. Atlas was asleep under the bar. Elena came out and sat on the step beside him. She'd found a Harbor and Hearth staff fleece somewhere, not her polo, a heavier one, and she had both hands wrapped around her own coffee mug. She looked tired in a specific and necessary way, the way people look when they've been through something that required everything they had and they've come out the other side of it still standing. They sat in silence for a few minutes and watched the light come up on Dunmore Street. What happens now? She asked. Rachel builds her case. Federal grand jury, probably. It'll take months. There'll be hearings and testimony and a lot of legal process that isn't fast or dramatic. He drank his coffee. Harwick will have lawyers, good ones. The congressional member will too. It won't be clean. But it'll happen. Yeah, he said, it'll happen. The evidence is out of Kane's reach and out of Harwick's reach, and it's already in 3 separate federal systems. The cover-up needed every piece in the right place, and now it doesn't have them anymore. That's not reversible. He looked at the harbor light on the buildings across the street. Nathan made it not reversible. Elena was quiet for a moment. He trusted you with 9 years of his work, she said, and you didn't even know you had it. No. And you kept the promise anyway. She looked at him sideways. You spent 9 years looking for me. Off and on. Don't, she said. Don't minimize it. He held the coffee mug. I promised him. That's not heroic. That's just, I promised him. Okay, she said. But you kept it. That's not nothing. He didn't argue. The bakery on Whitmore turned on its sign. The fishing boat engines grew louder as the boats moved out toward the harbor mouth. Somewhere up the block, an early delivery truck was backing into position with the rhythmic beeping that meant the day was actually starting. "I'm going back to school," Elena said. It wasn't tentative. It was the way you say a decision you've made. "I deferred twice. I have enough saved. I'm going to go." "Good." "I still need a job until the semester starts." "You have one," Logan said. "If you want it." She looked at him. "Not out of obligation," he said immediately. "If you want it, completely your call." She looked at the restaurant, the front windows with the warm light coming through, the sign above the door, Harbor and Hearth, black letters on wood, that needed repainting, Logan noted. Had needed it for a while. "I want it," she said. He nodded. They drank their coffee. After a while, Miles came out and stood on the step above them with his own cup, moving carefully because of the ribs. He looked at the street, looked at the light. "The congressional member's name came out an hour ago," he said. "Vaughn's contact leaked it to 2 news organizations simultaneously, so there's no single pressure point to suppress it. It's already online." He paused. "It's moving fast." Logan thought about that, thought about Nathan in a storage unit off Route 9, in the dark, waiting. "Good," he said. Miles sat down on the step above Logan. The 3 of them sat on the front steps of Harbor and Hearth as Port Haven woke up around them, and the morning came in off the harbor the way mornings did in this town. Salt and light and the smell of the bakery and the sound of the boats. Ordinary and continuous, and completely indifferent to everything that had happened in the dark. 4 months later, Logan repainted the sign. He did it on a Tuesday morning in October when the harbor fog was still sitting low on the water and the street was quiet. Noah held the ladder and complained about the fog, and Logan painted in silence with the focused attention of someone who found the work itself satisfying, independent of the result. The trial had begun 6 weeks earlier. It was not moving fast. Nothing about it was fast, which was accurate to what Logan had told Elena on the front step at sunrise. Harwick's lawyers were in fact good. The congressional members' lawyers were better. There had been motions and counter-motions and a classification battle over 3 documents that had taken 2 weeks to resolve, and Logan had followed the proceedings through Miles and through Rachel and through the news coverage that grew from one article into something considerably larger as Nathan's name became attached to it. "Nathan Brooks," the article said. "Special Forces operator. 3 years of covert documentation. Evidence preserved for nearly a decade. They didn't say his eyes were gray. They didn't say he was terrible at cards. They didn't say he called home from whatever base he was on whenever the satellite window opened and always ended the call the same way, which Logan had learned from Elena over the 4 months since the storage unit, learning Nathan through his daughter the way you sometimes learn a place through someone who grew up there. But the article said his name. Over and over, in outlets Logan had never expected to carry it. And the name stayed. Rachel had called Logan 2 weeks into the trial to tell him that the congressional member had agreed to a cooperation deal. Facing the weight of Nathan's documentation and Kane's testimony and a federal grand jury that had returned indictments on 11 counts, the calculation had changed. 3 of the 11 counts were directly tied to the death of Nathan Brooks. The deal didn't erase that. It made the prosecution of the remaining defendants faster and more complete, which was, as Rachel explained it, the thing that mattered. It wasn't clean. Logan had known it wouldn't be, but it was happening. Elena came back from her first semester of classes on the weekend Logan repainted the sign. She came in through the back like she always did, greeted Atlas, made herself coffee, and came out to the front to watch him finish the last letter. "Looks better," she said. "Needed it." "You could have hired someone." "I know." She watched him reload the brush. "Kane's sentencing is next month." "Yeah." "How do you feel about that?" Logan thought about it honestly, the way she always pushed him to. "Like, it's not the part that matters most," he said. "The part that matters is the equipment fraud convictions, the families of the soldiers who died because of bad gear." He smoothed out a brushstroke. "That's what Nathan built it for." "Not for Kane." "Not for Kane." She was quiet for a moment. "My mom kept his uniform," she said. "His service dress. In the back of a closet. I found it when I was going through her things after she passed." She held her coffee mug with both hands. I used to take it out and look at it when I was a kid. I didn't know why. I think I thought if I looked at it long enough, it would tell me something. Did it? No, she said, but I know now. She looked at the sign. He wasn't just a uniform. He was a man who saw something wrong and spent 3 years doing something about it alone, in secret, knowing he might not survive it, knowing that someone else was going to have to carry it the rest of the way. She paused. That's not in the uniform. No, Logan said. It isn't. He finished the last letter and stepped down off the ladder. Harbor and hearth. Fresh black paint on the wood, clean and slightly too dark. It would weather to the right shade within a few weeks. He looked at the sign. He'd built this place out of a gutted shell with burst pipes and a raccoon problem and the specific need of a man coming out of a war to do something with his hands. He'd built it without knowing that one Friday night a woman with her dead father's eyes would cry in his staff hallway, and he would walk through a door that had been waiting 9 years for him to open it. He picked up the paint can and the brush and looked at Elena. Come back for the holidays, he said. Noah's threatening to do a full Thanksgiving menu, and I'm going to need people who aren't just agreeing with him to keep him in check. She laughed, a real one, unguarded, the kind that arrived before the face could manage it. It looked like Nathan, too, he thought, the specific quality of the laugh in someone who didn't laugh carelessly. I'll come back, she said. She went back inside. Logan stood on the sidewalk in front of Harbor and Hearth in the October fog with a paint can in his hand and looked at the restored sign and thought about a mountainside and a promise and 9 years and a storage unit and a girl with storm gray eyes who had not needed saving, who had needed finding, which was a different thing entirely. He'd made a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. He kept it anyway. That's the only way promises like that ever get kept.